I don't see a reason to have it on unless I'm
A giant failure in my early internship was not pressing the record button. It wasn't good.
I've done that.
Well, when you get George McGovern mad at you because you screwed up his entire re-entry into South Dakota politics by not recording his day with farmers, it's like, oh my God. Slink out of Sioux Falls. All right, 6:59. James, say when we can go.
You ready to go? We're recording
Okay.
it.
Very good. And here we go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dan Haley. I'm the editor and publisher of Wednesday Journal. And we are here tonight for what is sort of the first piece of our campaign for a democracy program for this spring. We are going now through a wrap up of the elections. We have tonight's forum with the two candidates for Oak Park Village President. 2 weeks out, we will have a forum for the River Forest presidential candidates. We have obviously ongoing coverage online and in print of the election race. And on March the 17th, in print and online, we will have our voter empowerment guide that will have tons and tons of information about all of the candidates for all of the local offices that are up on the April 6th election. We're starting a little early because, as the village clerk would know, early voting also starts March
22nd.
22nd.
The March 10th, there is some information out there, if I can just add, that you can go to some Cook County courthouses and vote, but in Oak Park, March 22nd.
Okay, very good. A couple of housekeeping pieces and a question that we have gotten fairly often. Wednesday Journal is 41 years old. For the first 40 years, we were a for-profit company, and we took great pride in endorsing candidates. A year ago, as the community newspaper business has changed, we became the first legacy print, legacy for-profit publisher in Chicago to become a nonprofit. We are now growing community media. That is a nonprofit entity. We will ask you for money, so hold on. But the more immediate thing in terms of the election is that we are no longer allowed under IRS regulations to endorse candidates. And so we will not. And it's another one of the reasons why it's worth listening to tonight to get a sense of these two candidates. So far, 1,600 people have joined us as investors in our nonprofit. We're very proud of that. And we would invite you to think about joining to support our independent community newsroom. You are going to see some links at the bottom of the screen that will tell you how to do that. And you'll also see links that will tell you where to go to find out more about what growing community media is. It's our 4 legacy newspapers: Wednesday Journal of Oak Park and River Forest, the Austin Weekly News on the west side, Forest Park Review, and Riverside Brookfield Landmark. Housekeeping details: we are live on Zoom. We are live on Facebook. This session is being recorded. It will be posted on oakpark.com tomorrow morning. And because this is intended as a conversation, hopefully a fairly intimate conversation, we have turned off a lot of the features you know and love on Zoom. Chat and raise your hand and question and answer. Those are not functioning. It is not your screen. We have turned them off. We've also muted all of our viewers. We did ask earlier in this week for readers to send us questions for the candidates, and so we got a lot. And so they are not surprisingly thoughtful questions. We'll weave a few of them in, and then the last segment of the evening will be all reader questions. We are very happy to say that we are co-sponsored tonight along with the Business and Civic Council. And let me just introduce by a point of the finger to Frank Pellegrini of Prairie Title, who is the president of BCC. Steve Strawler is the executive director and a reporter at Crane's Chicago Business. My 2 colleagues are here. Michael Romaine. Michael is the education reporter for Wednesday Journal. He is the editor of our Austin Weekly News on the West Side, and he is the publisher of his own newspaper, the Village Free Press, which covers Proviso Township. Stacy Sheridan is our village government reporter. And all three of these folks, Michael, Stacy, and Steve, will be asking questions as we go along. But obviously, the other two people to introduce are the two people running for Oak Park Village President. Cate Readling is a longtime Oak Park activist. Vicki Scaman is the current village clerk. Has also been involved in other things over the years in Oak Park. They are welcome to tell us more about their bios as they want to. Thank you both for being here. We are very appreciative of your time. So let's start with this question. What would you like policing in Oak Park to look like 3 years out from now? How will it be the same? How different?
I
Okay,
love
you
to
want to
start at the core of the matter. I've never considered the question that way, what I would like it to look like in 3 years, but I love it because it's within the purview of the 4 years I hope to serve. Sure that was on purpose, so I appreciate that. But it's short term, but it's also gives enough time for some changes and modifications to happen. I think based on the work that I've had the opportunity to do over the past 2 years, looking into the realities of policing, both the results of policing and also the structures and systems of policing, what it is intended to do, what it actually does, and what we think it does, which I believe are all very different. My hope is that in 3 years, we would be able to mitigate a significant amount of the burden on our police department and have services provided in other ways that would be more successful and less harm causing. And then therefore, we would be able to also modify the way that we've structured our budget to match those priorities.
Very good. Vicki?
Yeah, this is a really great question. I love the way it's worded, although everything about the way that I've worked in the community has been about clearly identifying the need always and understanding what problems you're trying to solve. And so my intention is to not try to preconceive what it would look like and to walk our community through a data-driven process. It's a high priority of mine that all feel safe and have what they need to live and thrive in Oak Park. And so this service to the community is one where we want to look at the services that we provide and make sure they're working. So we need to follow the data. We need to also walk the community through all that, the collaboration with other community partners, and know if they're working or not working the way that they should. And I know I can tell you from experience. I was the co-chair of the Law Review Committee back in, say, 2011-12, where stemming from my work as the chair of the Liquor Control Review Board, brought in youth adjudication here to Oak Park because what we wanted was for offenses for cannabis or underage drinking to not go on young people's records and to link them with services. You probably remember that, Dan, because I'm sure you wrote about it. And but we sat with our police and our youth organizations and our schools and our community partners to identify what was missing in the system and work to fix it. And the people who are working within the system sometimes know best what needs to be fixed, but we also talk with parents and with young people. So this entire topic needs to be with the community, coming on a learning journey together to identify how it is that we can respond to this national call to relook at policing so that it serves our community and the people that live here and everybody feels safe.
Kate, are there groups, Vicki alluded to people or organizations, entities to collaborate with? Are there organizations you think need to be at the table for this?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I would like to take an example that a lot of us have been hearing and seeing about recently, a program that is based out of Oregon that's called Cahoots. And there was recently an article in the Atlantic that's very, very good, that was turned into a podcast for those who prefer to listen to things as well. And I thought the most important kernel in that piece was that the program, while 30 years old, is unique to its community because it was born out of the community need. So the collaborative work that I've been doing at the county level includes parties who have lived experience with policing. It has parties that represent the people that work in the jail and in policing. It has parties that represent people who are experts in healthcare and in housing, and then people who are experts in organizing all of these things. And so by having all of those people at the table, it's tough work, and you have to be very persistent and stay the course with it. But doing that work in a collaborative way in the community that you are living in, and making sure that, for example, when you learn about best practices like we did from NAMI, that it would be extremely—
NAMI is?
Sorry, the National Association of Mental Health Institute.
National Alliance for Mental.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicki. I'm so used to calling it NAMI for all these years.
I know, but other people don't know.
That's true.
The mental health group.
Yes.
Yep.
And NAMI Chicago specifically is very well known across the country. They are independent nonprofit organizations all over the country, but NAMI Chicago is particularly known. And for them to tell our coalition, we are advocating based on expert input that there should be social workers assigned into 911 call centers. That is something that we take seriously and then begin to advocate for how those things can happen. It's always going to be complicated no matter where you are, because every municipality, every state, county, city has a different structure. You know, we participate with Westcom, and there's several municipalities that participate in our call center, but Oak Park is the largest of them and therefore carries extra weight. And since we're considering that renegotiating that contract right now, it would be an excellent opportunity for Oak Park to use its expertise and its advocacy and its weight of being one of the larger municipalities in our region to really drive an effort like that.
Vicki, is the phrase defund the police a useful construct, or is it getting in our way?
Honestly, I have not let it bother me. I've heard from some other white people that they think it's not good marketing. Personally, I acknowledge it wasn't written for me. It was written for Black and brown Black people specifically. And so as a restorative justice practitioner, I listen to everything in my life for understanding, and and so that's a space where I just acknowledge my white privilege, and that I sought to learn about what defund the police is about, and care mostly about the people who live here in Oak Park, and again, that all feel safe. And so no, the marketing of defund the police, it's not for me to have an opinion about or to take in an offensive way. It's a reason why I believe that I would be an effective leader on this, because I don't respond with defensiveness on it. And I can lead a process where we're following that data. And I'm very well aware of all of the services that we have in our community. I'm the founding co-chair of the addiction recovery team, which also stem from that early work where we have the Community Mental Health Board, NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, and people in recovery. And that's one of the areas that I think I would want to look at with services to our community is currently our police department has a contract with Thrive to respond to calls that are about mental illness, but
And Thrive is
they
a
may not be
local-
equipped for every call. And so what I've seen from the clerk's office too, is that when our police are responding to addiction calls that after going to the hospital, they often end up in the same place where they started. And so that's an area of need that I think could be looked at. And it's just one of many examples. But there's really no reason to be defensive about these discussions, because you would always want to review programs to make sure that they're meeting the goals and serving the community well. That's just any program you would want to keep reviewing it on a regular basis.
Kate, do you have a quick response to a complicated question?
I appreciate that. I would, I appreciate Vicki's response that the name of the campaign, it's also not for me as much as it isn't for her. Defund the police is a campaign that is very, very old. It's not something that that just popped up out of the ground. So it isn't for us to decide what it is called. It is for us to be willing and collaborative in helping as many people as we can to understand what it means and why it's important.
Michael, you want to pick up? And you are muted.
Hear me?
Yes, sir.
How would each of you define equity?
Equity, from my perspective, is about access, making sure that people have what they need to live and thrive. And so that looks differently for different people. Social equity is about also understanding that much of the barriers that exist are barriers that were meant to help white people retain wealth. And so when you're talking about social equity from a government perspective, it needs to be about addressing those barriers and reducing them and providing people access to services, access to it, but at a level that is helping them, at a level that they need to live and thrive.
How would I define equity? Michael, I think we've had this conversation many times, and I am very, very thankful for the opportunity to continue the conversation with everybody on here in a public way, because I think that it's probably the most important conversation that needs to happen, not just in Oak Park, but everywhere. For me, I believe equity is inclusion, and that it's intentional inclusion. And that means that we are doing everything that we can to invite and to prioritize intentional inclusion of all people, with a special attention to the people in our community who have been systemically and generationally excluded.
Thank you for those responses. Again, for each of you, do you think the Village of Oak Park needs an equity policy that is more than a non-binding resolution? And if so, do you think you'll be able to rally enough votes necessary to pass it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That
To
meeting,
elaborate, or
that board meeting last 18 months, when must be 2 years now, when the board reviewed the proposed equity statement from the Community Relations Commission was a painful experience for me personally, and I know for many, many people. Leaving that boardroom that night was, I don't think I will forget that. And I'm sure that it was even more deeply felt by the people who put in all the hours of work to that policy statement, and especially to the people that it was meant to support. The way that work was treated was egregious. And the fact that it still remains a statement instead of a policy, the fact that for, at least the board was willing and able to add racial equity to its board goals, it's still listed as an afterthought, frankly, at the very end of the list with only one little line. That's not acceptable. And so my answer is yes, we need a policy. We need it to be codified. We need it to be the thing by which every decision is measured. And yes, I will get that done.
Yeah, and we also need to be able to go back and look at some of review our ordinances as they exist and our processes and policies as they exist, for reducing some of those barriers that, inevitably are there. But I know, and I was sitting there, and yes, and many people in our community responded, were hurt. There was harm that was done when the board responded the way that they did in revising an equity statement. I have all the confidence in the world that I would have been able to lead that discussion in a way that helped the board come together and understand the need. Our community has a long history of being willing to have difficult conversations, and they've never been as pretty as history might tell it to be. So we can do this, and I would use the skills that I've got on also being able to listen to my colleagues to help bring them along in a way that doesn't continue to cause harm in the community. And that's the type of leadership that I believe is really needed, and one of the reasons that I am running for village president.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that some of Oak Park's most marginalized voices are adequately represented within village government. And if so, explain. If not, how would you ensure that those voices are reflected?
No, I do not think that I'm sorry, Kate, did you want to go ahead?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. We need to very intentionally be working for having every level of our government accurately represent the people that live here in Oak Park. And that is a goal of mine, and it has been over the years that I've been village clerk. I've worked with the Citizen Involvement Commission to get into the community in places, in sectors of our community that aren't traditionally involved in government, and be present. It's also the way that I led when I was the director of a non-for-profit that designed programs, after-school programs for mostly Black and Brown students around music and African drumming and dance. And it was about getting out into the community and being present, being okay with being the uncomfortable situations, and getting to know people. And because really the key to increasing our diversity at every level of our government and decision making is to behave and to show that we are listening enough that people would want to be involved and heard. And so that's work that we need to do. And I have every intention of working with the trustees that I'm elected with to make sure that we continue to do that or tackle it head on.
Michael, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure.
Thank
Do you think that some of Oak Park's most marginalized voices are adequately represented within village government? If so, explain. And if not, how would you ensure that those voices are adequately represented?
Okay, so my short answer is no. We have never had a woman of color as village president in Oak Park. So I hope we can change that. That's thing one. Thing two is we cannot manage what we don't measure. And we have currently, for example, 20 commissions right now, and we don't know what the data is on what is the racial and age and demographic information about who's serving on those commissions.
We have that data, Kate.
That would be
I can share it with you.
that would be awesome. And I think that that should be publicly facing information so that when I go to see what my village is doing and who is working in my village, that that is information that I am able to ascertain, because there's not a lot of information available publicly.
Yes.
I think that really the answer to the question is two things. One is no, and two is the only way to do it is to measure it and to be intentional and transparent about it.
Yeah. So the Citizen Involvement Commission, as when I first came into the village clerk's office, that was one of the first things that we did, was we developed a survey that we sent out to all of the current commissioners to collect that information. I was very proud of the members of the Citizen Involvement Commission for their work in making sure that that data was collected safely. It was actually used as part of a project for the community leadership program in recognizing that we need to be intentional in being accessible and sharing awareness of what the commissions do in the community so that people want to get involved. I'm careful to not go and have it for myself or for anyone who sits on the Citizen Involvement Commission to be like recruiting to check a box. It's about making, people feel as if they have a sense of belonging and respected, and that their opinion, their perspective is desired, and it's going to go somewhere. It's going to be used to help lead our community. And so I will say that while I've never received an email from Ms. Readling for that data, it has been part of presentations in the past. And right now with the pandemic, it's probably not as accurate for this last year, but we've had it for the 2 previous years. And it's always been part of the action plan that's approved every year by the village board for the Citizen Involvement Commission.
You want to respond to that? Good.
I mean, no. I mean, you can go on the website now and the information is not available. I didn't know that that was something that we should have to email to ask for. I'm an advocate for transparency, and that information I think should be readily available. And I'm not sure why. I think the technology is available for us to be able to.
Well, I also did ask for a software in 2017, 18, and 19, and that would be for an open portal for the village clerk's office. Haven't received that, but it will be a priority moving forward. And that open portal would be providing that data so that you could see it without asking for it. But like I said, it's been part of action plans every year. Thank you.
Stacey Sheridan.
Okay, guys, my turn. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit and get into something everybody likes to talk about, which is the village budget and taxes and finances. So buckle up. I guess I don't know I haven't been paying attention to who's been speaking first or answering first. So bear with me here. I'm just going to say my question and you guys go for it. How significant a financial impact do you think COVID has made in Oak Park Village finances?
Fairly significant, yes. I think it's going to take at least another, well, it's going to be another year or 2 at least before we respond. This last budget was passed by dipping into our, rainy day fund, our general fund. And that's just not going to be sustainable. So there's we're going to have to work with our governmental partners. We're going to have to work to identify our shared goals and to prioritize where we spend our money, make sure that we're being very smart about how we budget, make sure that we understand as a village board when we're approving the budget, what is directly going towards those goals and across all departments. And so the quick answer is that it has been, and I think this is across our nation, COVID has affected municipality budgets, state budgets, federal budgets, and we're going to have to be very thoughtful on how we budget into the future.
Cate?
Yes, COVID, I think we see now a year into it, that it is affecting every facet of our budget, from expenditures to revenue, in the ways that we have had to spend money unexpectedly for services and resources, as well as missing revenue sources that we were counting on, particularly from retail and sales tax. So we will have to maintain a very holistic approach and a very transparent, and I would like to say a participatory approach to how we make the decisions to continue to recover the budget from COVID.
What do you mean by holistic approach?
I mean that we have to look at every department and every service. For example, our very precious leaf collection. I've heard the village manager actually say at the board table, like, don't bring that up because people get upset. We have to be willing to talk about all of the things. We need to be able to talk about and look closely at the regressive fines and fees that is subsidizing our budget right now. Things like parking tickets and packing water bills. We need to be willing to look at every single service that the village chooses to spend money on, and every department that we spend money on. And really the only way to do that accurately would be to rearrange the budget. Instead of looking at it by fund, we would have to look at it by exactly where the money is coming from and exactly what that money is being expended to. And that would take a board decision to direct the village manager to change that process.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the leaf collection. Is that something you would want to change?
I want us to look at every single thing. I happen to know specifically about the leaf collection that I think it's a great example of something that we love that we don't totally understand, because it's not a best practice for sustainability. It is honestly, oftentimes it's not compostable even because it's so contaminated. It causes a safety hazard, it inhibits parking, and it costs $350,000.
It didn't cost that much this year. I just want to make sure. The village went from 8 weeks to 6 weeks. So that is kind of what I just wanted to make sure that we pointed that one out for the record.
Yeah, I was going to say that is the discussion that the village board has been able to have. And some of what you talked about was openly, discussed. Now, one thing that I have been successful at in the past is identifying state and federal grants to fund initiatives that, especially in collaboration with other partners, good governmental partners. When I was working with the township as liquor, actually came from when I was chair of the liquor board, identified a $500,000 state grant, and then later on another $500,000 state or federal grant. Those were also grants that Wednesday Journal wrote about. One was a strategic prevention framework with the Illinois Department of Human Services, and the other one was through SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration. And those provide directly so that the services with the township for underage drinking and drug use are completely 100% grant funded. And we need to continue to look for those kinds of opportunities. We need to garner our relationships with our state and federal representatives. And And we strengthen that opportunity when we work across our borders too with other communities. So for sustainability grants, to be able to show that we're working with Berwyn or Forest Park and others. And I've had success in that currently as the president of the Municipal Clerks Association for 37 communities. I have relationships with many of our neighbors, and I'm still the co-chair of the Data and Education Committee with the West Garfield Park Coalition. And as I said, when you can show the federal government that you're working with your neighbors, and then you can seek those grants stronger. And that's a skill set that I would bring to budgeting and understanding and direction to the village manager.
Vicki, you
Staff
kind
is
of
doing a
answered
great
this-
job soliciting grants. That's kind of their job.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
could you repeat that, Kate?
I said the staff, it's the responsibility of staff to solicit grants. And I think that they are, that they do a fairly good job of it. And I'm sure they'll continue to do so.
Well, Vicki, you kind of already answered this question, my second question, before I even asked you it. So I'll give you I'll let you answer it, Kate. What other outside revenue sources could help? And how do you go about finding them?
Well, I think that while staff pursuing grant funding is an excellent idea, I think that the most successful area to look in is collaborating with the county and the state and making sure that what Oak Park is able to participate in from the county budget and from the state budget, that we are accessing those things. There was a great opportunity that Oak Park did support, although it didn't pass at the state level, that we will have to look at again, and that was the fair tax referendum. That would have mitigated a lot of expenses for municipalities, but especially as it relates to schools. But I think that state and county are the places, along with the grant funding, that the staff would do.
Well, the state and county budgets are not super healthy at the moment either, I would say. Do you think that they would be willing to share the limited funds that they have with Oak Park?
I think that every governing governmental entity in Illinois has to be looking at their budget holistically. The sheriff's budget is $600 million. The county is not broke. The state is not broke. It's just a decision that we make as to what we spend our money on.
Do you feel like we're just going deeper in debt?
What do you mean?
Well, you said we're not broke, but are we in debt from the state and the county levels?
I'm not sure if I totally understand your question, but I would say that I would not. Although the village CFO seems to be recommending in this last budget that we would be looking at having to take on debt, and that the county and the state have their own process for making those decisions. I don't see us needing to do that.
Stacey, if I can chime in for just a
Sure, go
moment,
ahead.
I think we should start with the governmental partners that we share that right here in Oak Park. We are in debt, our county, our state, we are in debt, clearly. And with our pension debt's going to continue to rise. But when we talk about community level goals, equity, sustainability, these are things that the township and the library and the park district are all going to be investing in also. So if we can work together to identify what needle we want to move, what we want to work on together, then we can have our budgets be more collaboratively working together. I plan on using the relationships that I have with those governmental partners to build trust, so that collaboration is genuine, so that whatever we're planning on sustainability, we know exactly what the Park District and the library and D97 and D200 are planning on those same initiatives, so that the budgets, we maximize our resources and can accomplish still our goals. That's something that the community has been asking for decades. You know, survey after survey after survey has been, can we, our governmental partners, please just work together better? I believe I can do that because the coalitions that I have led have had every single governmental body in not just Oak Park, but in River Forest working together for those, the goals that we identified together. And it was not, it was about what resource are you really good at that you can bring to the table so that the money that we spend goes further. And that's the approach that I take.
I think further, those collaborations can also extend to projects. And I know that all of us have recognized missed opportunities among our taxing bodies, but then at the same time, there have been many collaborations that are not necessarily quantified in a budget. For example, the Park District collaborating with closely with the school district to respond to how we were going to take care of childcare for families in Oak Park. I think those missed opportunities are things that if there was greater transparency in our community, that we would have a much broader push and expectation for that type of collaboration. For example, when the village is opening the street and the schools are upgrading their IT things, and the park district also wants to upgrade their IT, that there should be pressure to make those things happen together instead of letting behind closed doors, letting opportunities like that fall away.
So recently, just this year, the Village and D97 partnered and finished a fiber network throughout our village so that we could have stronger internet through our school systems and with the village, and did that together. And left the additional fiber network in the piping underground so that if the park district or the library or the township at any point in the future decide they'd like to kind of buy into that, it's already there. So that ability to collaborate exists. I do agree that we could be more transparent always. I mean, one of the reasons that became as strong of an advocate within our school systems many years ago, I'm an empty nester now, so my children are adults, but was because I could feel the silos that existed. And that we are a bit of a community that is this in the know community. So I've increasingly become a strong advocate to break down those barriers but built up the relationships in a way that understanding that I come from a place of integrity, that we've been willing to work together. So any collaborative effort that I've been part of has been transparent. And we can continue that and do that across the board.
I would like to ask, since we kind of got moved away with that, which was fine, but I'm going to come back a little bit. So in what way can the village reduce its spending?
Technology. We have not advanced or taken advantage of technology, the open portal that I mentioned. So I presented in the clerk's budget in 2017, 18, and 19. And not only FOIA software that would have been less expensive than what we currently use today by hundreds of thousands of dollars, but also that access to information within open portal that would have been helping people stay in touch with construction as it happens, and possibly, any kind of storytelling where your snow plows are. All of these things are accessible. The FOIAs, since that was also something written about by the Wednesday Journal, was in your budget. We need to know, when I said earlier that we need to know exactly how much something is costing when we're at the board table and making those decisions across all departments, that FOIA software that I proposed was less than $20,000. The software that ended up being approved, while the sticker price was already something that was involved in or part of other departments in Village Hall, nobody really knew that also what you were doing was hiring an extra person in the village manager's office, hiring an extra person in IT to make it happen. All of these other costs that are part of a decision that need to be understood when passing that budget. But I do believe that technology is underutilized within our government, and that is an easy, low-hanging fruit area where we could save money over time. We have had more revenue come from, and it kind of pains me to say it out loud, but Amazon. So there's during the pandemic, we've had an increase in our budget there. So we can work with what we have right now. I think if we're very careful on the decisions that we make to budget smart, and hopefully stay within a 3% levy. But it will be a challenge, but I think we can also work with staff, because with the village manager form of government, yes, you are not going home and all doing your own separate homework. You're utilizing staff. But at the same time, each person elected comes with a certain skill set. And you want to be able to lean on each other to make sure that you're asking those critical thinking skill questions, and being good, responsible elected officials for your community. And a grant work and collaboration with our community partners is obviously where I come from and what I'm going to bring. So, thank you.
Stacy, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. In what ways can the village reduce spending?
By implementing a participatory budgeting system and prioritizing the things that we choose to spend money on, by listening to what people want us to spend our budget money on. I think that the transparency and the communication about the budget and about where we're spending our money is really the responsibility of the people who have been in that building, and it hasn't been happening. And so I took it upon myself, because I'm not waiting for day one to start leading. I pulled together a group of super smart people to build a tool that will be able to present here in a couple of weeks, that will be able to show people a graphic demonstration of where our money is going, how much of it, and what has the trend been since 2013 budget. Beginning with building things like that will make our budget more accessible, that will make our decisions more accessible, is going to be the way that we can find ways to be more efficient and effective with how we spend our money.
Kate, you said a participatory budgeting system. Would that be like a survey that you send out to people in Oak Park and say, hey, how do you want us to spend this money? Give us your top 5 projects. What do you mean by participatory?
Participatory budgeting is a discipline. It's a system, a process that exists, that has existed for many years, and is a willingness to adapt that protocol into your village. And because we already have the structure, they're not filled out, the commissions at this time, but we do have that structure built to use towards a participatory process, where we would have not just a survey. It isn't a cursory or surface level initiative. It is a deep, durable, long-term commitment from a village that says we want to make decisions going forward with the input of the people who are impacted by the budget.
Stacy, thank you.
Yeah,
We're going to move on.
Can I just ask one last question? Very, it's a yes or no
sure.
question. Thank you. Do you pledge to keep the village tax, or the village's share of the Oak Park property tax levy, to a 3% increase?
Did you say 3? Okay. My goal would be for us to always go in with trying to not increase the budget at all. That would be my starting point.
With the pension costs going up every year and something that we're not able to control in our debt levy as well, 3% has been a honorable effort amongst the current board members to maintain. And so staying at that 3%, I think is probably the more reasonable and still going to be difficult goal to have in all just transparency and honesty and forthright about that topic.
Will you try?
Yes.
Oh, and Kate,
Yes.
thank you.
I want to take a moment to introduce Frank Pellegrini. Frank is the head of the Business and Civic Council, which is our co-sponsor tonight. Frank, you are muted, but you want to tell us something about what the BCC is, and then introduce Steve, please.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for alerting me that I was muted. That would have been awkward. But thank you for allowing the BCC to partner with Wednesday Journal and Growing Media, Growing Community Media, to bring this program into the homes of our interested and concerned citizens. The BCC's formal name, Dan, is the Business and Civic Council of Oak Park. It was formed in 2004. We are an independent, self-funded group of individuals. We represent local businesses, professions, property owners, and community organizations. We meet monthly, and in times not affected by pandemics, we sponsor a number of forums throughout the year. We engage with government representatives, elected officials, experts, thought leaders, and others in discussions of challenges, opportunities, and the great variety of issues we face locally, in neighboring communities, and statewide. Occasionally, we opine publicly with our position on certain issues, but we express no political leanings, and we never endorse candidates for public office. Essentially, our mission is to explore ideas and initiatives that support Oak Park's economic viability and the vitality of its community. The BCC is very proud to be part of this program this evening, and thank you for sharing. Now, let me turn it over to the BCC's executive director and our journalist in residence, Steve Strahler.
Thank you, and good to meet you, Vicki and Kate. As much as you may respect your opponent, what do you think makes you the better choice to head village government?
I am running for village president because I believe that we need a change. We need vision. We need people with a bold vision and a commitment to the changes that need to happen in Oak Park. We haven't seen that up until now, and that is what I want to bring into Village Hall.
So I ran for village clerk. This is the first time I'm running as a policymaker. I am not an incumbent. I'm running because I love Oak Park and I want our village government to work in our best interests. I'm a longtime Oak Parker who has worked with all of our governmental partners. I've been very successful at bringing people together to identify what our community's shared goals are on initiatives, and I know how our government works. I understand the village form of government. One of the reasons that I ran for village clerk was to help others with how to navigate our government. And so what I learned over time is that the skill set that I have would be valuable in helping us actually make the progress that we need to make. Our community deserves to make progress on racial equity, sustainability, and so at this point, and economic recovery with our small business community. So my entire service in our community for over 30 years has been about fulfilling that need and about civic service. I have an identity without running for office. So to me, this is giving back to my community and helping all who live here navigate our systems. So I know that I have that skill set to also facilitate that clear direction to the village manager.
Thanks. What do you think, what would be your priority in terms of attracting more investment to Oak Park? How would you go about inducing that?
I think it's the responsibility of the village president and the board to direct that messaging as to what development we are seeking and interested in Oak Park. And I think that having a philosophy of supporting both, seeking and directing the Oak Park Economic Development Corporation and other organizations that bring businesses into Oak Park, directing them to know that we are interested in sustainable and appropriate development, and at the same time focusing on the businesses that are here, employing some economic gardening. We need to take care of our own garden. Anyone in business knows that it's much easier to support who's here and less expensive to support who's here than to replace them. And so providing the assistance by building resources around them, making the things that the village does more accessible, bringing back the positions of the staff people who were direct support. I've heard from businesses again and again that they don't feel like they have access to the village and to the services and the things that they need, and that different parts of Oak Park feel treated differently than downtown. And so looking at the village holistically, making sure that all of those voices are at the table, making sure that there is collaboration so that North Avenue and Roosevelt and South Oak Park Avenue, that they're all being included in those conversations, and then making sure that the services that we can provide are going into all parts of Oak Park.
So when I was chair of the liquor board, I ushered in loosening some of our laws in response to what restaurants need. I ran a restaurant once upon a time. That was my why I was recruited onto that commission. Providing that, so it's looking at the policies too that are those barriers. We opened up our laws for outdoor cafes, expanded our hours of operation so we could compete with neighboring communities, reduce some barriers for some of the events in downtown Oak Park. It was listening to the community and listening to make sure that the barriers that they had so that they could thrive in Oak Park were reduced. I'm a second term board member for the Chamber of Commerce and co-chair of the Women in Business affinity group. We're also reaching across our borders with Forest Park, Berwyn, Maywood, and River Forest, or say Forest Park and River Forest, to make sure that we build those support relationships between women in business, and bringing some personal development and networking to support women businesses and Black and Brown owned businesses. As a village, what I've been disappointed in the last couple of years is not what I consider a willingness to collaborate and communicate before a business has to pivot to changes in policy. COVID-19 in particular. If our small businesses don't, we have a tendency to not want to release information until it's 100% factual, but to be giving small businesses information after the guidelines are changing or as they're changing, I know as somebody who's run a small business that that's too late. You know, you need to be able to plan for that. And too many of our small businesses don't have the capital. They need access to capital and resources and responding to the technology changes. So I think that the village, working with the Oak Park EDC and the Chamber and Visit Oak Park and our other partners, could work together to identify those strategies for retention. I would ask that the Oak Park Economic Development Corporation, which is part of their mission to be about business retention, that we strengthen that into the future, and that the sharing of the resources between the chamber and the Oak Park EDC is just all hands on deck, all hands on deck. You know, what I see as a strength of the BCC is that you're discussing what some of those barriers probably are, you know, in very like a think tank for what to bring to our community. So I would also want to include the BCC
Okay, so
and the guidance that they have.
what specific assistance to small business would you advocate from?
I would have
Public.
the staff return to that was direct support. When I would sit with the Hemingway Business District, some of the best support and the best success that they felt was when a staff member, when Loretta was there, when she would be out in the community and attending those meetings and being able to answer questions, being able to be accountable, being there to hear what those businesses needed, and also having that view. It's the village's responsibility to have that view of where everyone is and what everybody needs, to be able to bring that back and provide those services, and doing it in a way that the village has a responsibility to. The village has the view of everywhere. For example, in downtown Oak Park, I know that Shannon Williams has fought for years to institute a composting program for those restaurants, and has had a constant fight because they all have different contracts. The village should take responsibility at that higher level of stepping in and helping, so that we don't have just front of house composting, that we're actually making a significant difference in sustainability by making sure that we are paving the way, that the village is paving the way to make it easier for those businesses to do that.
So Steve, you were asking about resources to small businesses, is that right?
Yes, what the village itself could do to assist small business more in the wake of COVID, especially.
Yeah. Right. Well, you know, so the chamber has recently put out some of their top concerns, and access to it, development opportunities for learning new skills was one of them, and so I think that that I would ask for staff, and it is part of our village manager form of government, that we do have professional staff. But as people who are representing and elected, we can bring forward those critical ideas. And so I would ask about the possibility of us having those development classes to help small businesses with the skills that they need. Having run a small business, I know it's overwhelming sometimes to learn something new, and or even to just look at a grant. That's another opportunity that we could have, is helping small businesses with the grants that they could be pursuing from responding from COVID-19. It is my hope that the federal government does make some grants available, understanding that this is an issue across our nation. But if you're a small business person who is just desperately trying to pay the bills that month, then looking at a grant can be overwhelming. And so to be able to have people that can help people identify those grants. I also think there's potentially opportunity with linking the empty storefronts with people who maybe have new business ideas, kind of as a new business incubator. That's something that I would ask the Oak Park EDC. Is this something that you could work on? Is it possible? What would it look like? How much would it cost us?
That's in my plan on my website. I think that incubators is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
And what should the village be doing to blunt the inevitable economic forces of gentrification that are, making Oak Park better in some ways, but obviously increasing inaffordability of housing?
Stop giving away big projects to wealthy developers and then letting them get away without paying their fair share in taxes. We're about to find out that the evaluation on the Vantage building While it was valued down $10 million, they appealed it and received another mitigation to that of another $50 million. And that $50 million is now going to land on the backs of our small businesses. The village should have been advocating against that. D97 showed up to advocate against it, but that's the only taxing body that did. The village should be supporting that. The village brought that project and the other big projects, big luxury apartment buildings. They should be advocating for Goldman Sachs to pay their fair share.
I'm sorry, Steve, would you repeat that?
What should the village do to blunt the forces of economic pressures of gentrification that have their upside, but also decrease the affordability for many residents?
Yeah. I would work with the Residents Corporation, whose mission it is to make quality, affordable housing available to people in our community. And they have specific goals set for 20% of lower than 50% AMI, and then a majority of their housing that is 80%, and work to see what is it that we can do to make to open up some housing vouchers. What is it that we can do to grow the number of affordable units that the Residents Corporation is working with? And what kind of development there, so that, but all development should be with a proper analysis of how are we meeting our long-term community goals. And affordability is a real concern of mine, not just for people who want to move to Oak Park and live here and enjoy all that we've got, but for people who have lived here for a long time and want to stay. And so I would ask for a study on what options that are available to us, and also using the resources and the skill sets of our different community partnerships with the Oak Park Regional Housing Center as well. And where is it that the Residents Corporation, the Housing Center could really work together so that our community can embrace and those goals, and have it not be an issue year after year after year of validating, because we know what we're trying to attain together.
Thank you.
As far as affordable housing, though, we've done the studies. We know what we need to do. We've added 1,500 units of luxury housing apartments in Oak Park over the past 6 years, and we're losing the diversity of our village. We're losing the Black population, and the brown population is decreasing in Oak Park. We know these things, and we know how to mitigate that. The village needs to take responsibility for addressing the housing stock that we have, which would also be meeting a sustainability goal, because that's where most of the offenses in sustainability happen, is in old housing. So addressing those things, because the things that we're offering now are not actually available to everybody that needs it. So we know what we need to do. And I hope that you will join me on March 25th at my affordable housing event, so we can talk about all of the details.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We're down to the last 20 minutes or so, and I'm going to ask I'm going to ask the two candidates to be as concise as you can, because we have a bunch of questions. So first one is, are you running for village president or mayor?
Village president.
Is that important, or is it some odd symbol that Anon liked?
It is very important, because language is important. I believe that people are intelligent and they can understand what village president means. And choosing to call yourself the mayor, I think, gives people the wrong idea of what your responsibilities and what your capabilities are. The village president is one among 7 intentionally, and calling it anything else, I believe, is misleading.
Vicki?
Our form of government is a village president with 6 trustees and a village manager that handles the day-to-day. And so, yes, a board is led by a village president.
We have a question from Galen Gockel, one of the elders of the village. And he asks, about how much money do you expect to spend, each of you, on your campaign? Do you have a sense of that right now? Cate?
I have a very clear sense. I started this journey 4 years ago when I considered running for village president because I was so distraught and disappointed with the way the current administration was behaving. And starting that journey then, one of the first things I found out was that the current village president had raised almost $100,000. I wasn't expecting that and I wasn't prepared for that. And so that's why I began preparing for it then, and doing political issue and political candidacy work, and started a year ago on organizing this campaign and working out a budget in light of COVID, knowing that we were going to have to focus on methods other than what we typically rely on, which is having volunteers knocking door to door. We're not able to do that. We haven't been able to do that much up until now. And we're not able to rely on that starting at the beginning. So my budget is going to end up being $70,000 probably by the end. And the majority of that is paying people. I believe in paying people for their work. And I don't want us to continue having only candidates to choose from who are wealthy enough or who have wealthy friends that can help them pay for those things, or that have the opportunity to volunteer. We need to be expanding who has access to the democratic system. And the way to do that is to compensate people for their time. So I'm very proud of our budget. And from the very beginning, we have had a plan of keeping meticulous records so that this could be a roadmap for other people going forward to be able to see where can I spend money and where can I find other ways other than having to raise cash. But here's what I love about raising money. Raising money is accountability. We have over 600 donations to our campaign, and all of that represents accountability. That means that people are invested in our campaign, and I am very proud of that.
Vicki?
I find my opponent's answer very curious, because it almost seems as if she's following suit with the very administration that she is criticizing. So
I would lay my budget out next to anybody else's budget to do a comparison that way. I don't see them as the same.
no,
Vicki, go
I'm
ahead.
talking about the dollar amount, and you've had several amendments. I'm looking to raise $25,000 to $30,000, which is consistent with what village presidents before Anon spent on, and it was actually with their entire slate. I'm a single mom. This is the most amount of money that I have ever made in my life as a village clerk right now. I was a school teacher. I ran a non-for-profit. I ran a business where I was paying other people before me. So no, I am not a person who can afford to fund my own campaign. I was a renter for most of my life in Oak Park.
I was really referring to Jim Taglia spending $40,000 on his own campaign and having the idea that was a good thing, that he wasn't burdening other people, and not having an understanding that that is a privilege to be able to spend $40,000 on your own campaign. I was not referring to you at all, Vicki.
Cate,
Well, the truth is that I actually just haven't given it nearly as much thought. I'm running a campaign based on integrity and my civic services community and my desire to give back. And as far as paying people that are working for me, I am so proud of the team that I've got. I've got people from every walk of life that are part of our committee. I have the committee that represents what we want from Oak Park, where we've got both people are on a more conservative scale or a progressive scale that are now friends because of their efforts to help me win this race. And that is getting me through every single day with pride. And so I want to return that our community to not needing to feel as if you need to raise that kind of money to win a race.
Kate,
And everybody, I'm sorry, just one last thing.
please.
And everybody that I have paid in my campaign is Black or brown. Now, that's not something that, and an Oak Parker, they live in Oak Park. And all of my print materials are union and printed here in Oak Park. So I'm doing my best to live Oak Park's values, and I'm very proud of it.
Kate, Galen raised an issue. A couple other people in their questions to us also raised it, that you have accepted a $1,000 donation from the Service Employees Union, which is the representative of some percentage of Village Hall workers. Why is that okay?
Oh, I'm very proud to have the support of a union of working people. SEIU has over 2,000 members in Oak Park, and that's a significant number of people. And I'm proud to have an affiliation with them. I also believe that endorsements, the way that endorsements work is that you interview, you answer questions, typically a questionnaire, maybe you have a Zoom meeting now, and the organization decides that your values align with their values, and then they choose to support you. And one of the ways to support a candidate and to support a race is to donate money. Other ways that they do it is to communicate to their members to say, this is what we did and this is why we chose to support this candidate. They might make phone calls. It's the way that many organizations work. Depop does that. The People's Lobby does that. Lots of organizations work that way. So I'm very happy to have that, and mainly because it is transparent, like where all of our money comes from is transparent. And then whatever work that that we do going forward is also transparent.
So,
David Yamish, go ahead, Vicki.
no, I just wanted to ask, because I never received a questionnaire from the SEIU, how it is exactly that you even received the endorsement, if there was, so, because actually to me, an endorsement is when you're giving both sides of any campaign the opportunity to answer questions and learn about them.
It's probably because of my longstanding work with several unions and several organizations.
The People's Lobby?
Excuse me?
The People's Lobby?
Yes, certainly the People's Lobby too. Working Families Party, the Chicago Community Bail Fund, National Nurses United, Shriver Center on Poverty Law. There's a lot of organizations that I work with.
From outside of Oak Park?
From everywhere. Oak Park is not an island. I don't think that we should try to continue the Oak Park exceptionalism idea that somehow things don't apply to us or that we are not a part of a region and a county. I believe that we need to be the best partner that we possibly can, especially since we fight above our weight. We might be just a few miles big, but we have a huge amount of resource, both intellectually and financially. And I think that we have to take that as a responsibility.
I do agree. In working with our neighboring partners, there's a long list of policy that I've advocated it in. It's right here in Oak Park that has been in collaboration with our neighboring communities to benefit both, just not necessarily lobbying for money.
Vicki, do you have a concern with some of the organizations Kate just listed out in particular, or in just philosophically?
I did see the discussions that I'm having when I'm working with neighboring communities are, they're relationships where you understand what's going on and relevant to a community. I do not know that the organizations that Kate has talked about really know about the relevance here in Oak Park to their discussions. And yes, there's a reason that in 1952, when we switched from mayoral form of government to a village manager form of government, is that we chose to not have Democrat and Republican Party representation in our local politics. And so this seems to me to be a return to that, that kind of politics that wasn't prioritizing the what's best for our community first.
Well, sadly, the organization that supported that doesn't really exist anymore to support people to run the way that it did. And it did a beautiful job. And the first call
You're referencing who,
the
Kate?
Village Manager Association. The first call that I made 4 years ago, when I left an iGov meeting in frustration, was to the VMA and asked to interview with them, because I thought it was remarkable that our community has or had a robust group of community members who volunteered and even spent their own money, pulled their own money together to help support people to run for local office. It was a fantastic, beautiful, wonderful thing. And I had every intention of repeating that and going working with the VMA. But sadly, 2 years ago, they disbanded. And so I had to make a difficult decision, and it was a difficult decision to choose to run as a Democrat in Oak Park when that is not the tradition. But as village president, you have to make difficult decisions. I knew that there were people who were going to be upset with me, and I had lots and lots of conversations about it, but I still had to weigh the decision about community safety, about being able to start collecting petitions a month ahead of time when we knew that COVID was only going to get worse day by day. That was the end of August. And then discovering the fact that this system, this State Board of Elections system, has been in existence all this time, and no one's made any steps to make that more equitable. And instead, just maintaining a purity test, if you will, to say you have to be willing to wait longer and collect more petitions and work harder in order to participate in Oak Park in the electoral system. I have intentions to expose that, to make sure that people understand that there is a huge difference in what is required of you, and that's what went into my decision. I'm very proud to work with the people that I work with and the folks that helped me make that decision, like Rich Means and Bob Downs. I am very proud to have their support and to have been able to make this difficult decision.
Well, so that's it. That's very interesting because had you, sorry, Dan, I'm sorry.
Please, go ahead.
I have two people on my committee that were part of the VMA, and they've been a huge help to me. And those people, so a lot of those people from the VMA still are here in Oak Park right now, and would have been accessible to you had you sought out their advice. Something that I've done as village clerk, and in always looking to. I'm sorry, Kate, I'm talking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're doing that a lot, though.
Yeah, that's nice. So the VMA was a huge resource, and something that I've also worked from the village clerk's office to help people provide them with information on where to find, how and when to run for office. And you mentioned Mr. Means, and I am really sorry that he has passed away. That is incredibly sad. I reached out to you when he sent me an email telling me that Miss Vicki needed to learn how to play with the big kids, and asked for your apology in being treated that way as a woman, and you did not. You chose not to acknowledge that email of where I was mistreated by your attorney.
I'm sorry to hear that, because I thought for sure that I had responded to that, but more to the point, I want to hold on. I would like to reflect back on one thing, because when you were implying that all of the organizations that I work with are from outside of Oak Park. And I'd like to point out that the way that I know what the issues are in Oak Park is that I have been organizing with people in Oak Park for a number of years, and that's how we know. So the People's Lobby is an organization. Almost everybody that volunteers with the People's Lobby that considers themselves a member lives here in Oak Park. And we create community events, and we have for the past several years, where we get people together and we talk about what those issues are, what are the things that they see as important in Oak Park, and what do we need to be advocating for. That's how we decide to work on the fair tax. That's how we decide to work on what is real community safety and questions like that. So I wouldn't want anybody to have the wrong idea about what the People's Lobby is and who we're talking about when we say that.
Can I go to one last question, which is not going to surprise either of you? The next village board, a month out, 5-6 weeks out, is going to be a majority of new people. The way candidates sort of drifted off. The last couple of years have been challenging, difficult. We had multiple questions, people talking about feeling embarrassed about how the village board has behaved and argued. Vicki, you were sitting silently at the table. Cate, I'm sure you were watching. So there's going to be a new dynamic because there are going to be 4 new people. But how do you assure that we're not going to fall back into this pretty bitter and not often productive discussion?
That's actually the key reason that I chose to run for village president and not village trustee, because the village president has the opportunity and has the space to set the tone of how the board acts together, how the board acts within the context of the village, and how the board acts, the village acts within the context of all the taxing bodies and all the volunteer organizations and all the wonderful things that Oak Park is. So being in a position to be able to set that tone, I have gone toe to toe with the Boy Scouts of America to force them to change their policy to not allow gay scouts or leaders, and then to push them to open up to transgender people and to girls. I continue my work within that organization to hopefully end the religious requirement in that organization. That's kind of the last bastion there. So I feel very confident that that I have the skills to be able to bring that to having a board of individuals, whoever is elected, that feel and are heard, and then also make sure that we are participating with each other in a way that's not left to just showing up at the board meeting and having contentious confrontations.
Vicki?
I have no doubt that every single person who is sitting at the board table right now loves Oak Park. And actually, I believe that Cate Readling loves Oak Park as well. And that in reality, we're both running because we want to see a change. You're seeing me speak the way that I'm speaking tonight because I care about truth and honesty and integrity. And I have sat at the board table listening to that, the way that things have unfolded. And I have felt the weight on the shoulders, my shoulders as the village clerk and as an elected official representing our community, of what it means to be an elected official and needing to raise those standards. Listen without being defensive. Listen for what it is that you can learn. I'm going to work with every single person that I'm elected with and who's going to remain at the board table to make sure that we identify where our goals overlap, and then use what I know about our form of government to provide that clear direction to the village managers so that our community can expect from us the progress that we are capable of making on sustainability, racial equity, and economic recovery, and working with our governmental partners, building trust too, so that our work is collaborative. You might remember, Dan, I don't know, it's 2001. The Boy Scouts in Oak Park were being pushed out of Oak Park for not accepting the OPLG. So do you remember who it was that championed that and brought our PTO together to host forums and write a letter and send it to the Boy Scouts? Well, it was my mother and Carolyn Newberry Schwartz in 2001, who championed that and brought our community together to tell the Boy Scouts that that's not here for Oak Park. So Opelga gave my mother, Irene Clute, and Carolyn Newberry Schwartz award in 2001 because they did that proactively without needing to be asked by the LGBTQ community to fight for that. That is how I was raised. That is how I have operated. I have been advocating for fairness and fighting for policy change since 1994. I have been involved in coalitions in every single one of our governmental bodies. And I have been willing to do, or I have been doing that work from behind the scenes, not needing to be in the limelight. But this is a point when somebody who can put the needs of the community above their own, remain honest and have high integrity at every step of the way is what we need for our next village president and why I am running.
Kate, you have a final word?
I do. Thank you, Dan. Vicki, you're right. I do love Oak Park very much. And I see us at a very important turning point that we're either going to decide to choose the status quo, or we're going to choose to be bold and progressive and to make the hard decisions and to see them through. And that is what I really hope that we choose to do by electing me for village president.
All right. Please, Vicki, go ahead.
When I was the executive director of a local non-for-profit and I challenged them my first 2 months as that executive director as to what exactly was it that was making them a non-for-profit. That was Steckman Studio of Music, who had a jazz band, and every middle school in town had a jazz band in our community because we do value the arts and music. And I pushed to identify where the need was, and that result was African drum and dance, and then hosted that African drumming in my own basement. I have been walking a progressive walk my entire life. And I will repeat that our community can do better, will do better, and that we can also do that while listening to each other and being fiscally responsible, collaborating with our partners to navigate some very difficult times. And experience will most definitely matter, because as you have said, the wonderful people that are choosing to run for trustee right now are otherwise going to be new. And some of the discourse that the unfortunate discourse at the village board table has been because it is difficult to then sometimes know how to pivot what it is that you want to accomplish to clear directive to the village manager, and to be making sure is that you understand how our village manager form of government works and how I understand how it works inside and outside of Village Hall. We just can't afford to waste any more time. Thank you.
Thank you both. Let me say just a couple of things. March 17th, Wednesday Journal will be hosting a presidential forum for the two women running for village president of River Forest, Kathy Aducey and Patty Hennick. The event tonight is going to be posted on oakpark.com tomorrow, the recording of this. I want to thank James Kay and Mary Ellen Nelligan, my two colleagues who got us up on whatever this live broadcast streaming is. A couple hours ago, I wasn't sure we'd do it, but we did. And I want to thank Cate Readling and Vicki Scaman for their time, our partners at BCC. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and good night.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.